Hello and welcome everyone, I am Madals and welcome to another Heart of the Swarm beta cast. Today it is a ladder game, it is a PvT, and I haven't cast enough of these in Heart of the Swarm yet, so I am glad to be watching it. Let me introduce the two players. In the top right position we do have the red Protoss. It is Kitty, and his opponent in the lower left we do have the blue Terran. It is Neeb. So I'm trying to remember the last game of Neeb's I cast. And off the top of my head, I can't recall, but it may have been versus, was it versus Idra? I can't remember. I can probably have a look. You can have a look if you want. Neeb gave me a good game last time I saw him play, so really looking forward to this. I'm thinking that these two should have some interesting builds going on. I know Kitty's been experimenting with things because this is actually from Kitty's replay pack, which has just got an obscene number of replays, which are fantastic, and I basically love them for putting them in a pack and uploading them online because that is good times. So, what have we got in terms of the TvP matchup? What can we see? What can we expect? In Heart of the Swarm, I'd say the biggest switch up is just down to the Mothership Core. One-base Mothership Core harassment can have a lot of potent effects, mainly due to things like, although not really influential on Daybreak so much, but it gives Prisoner of the high ground for a start, which can make things incredibly difficult for a Terran. There's also the situation where that if your Protoss army gets caught out of position, you can use mass recall if things don't go wrong, and generally speaking it's not going to really be an overcommitment at any point. Then throw in things like Oracle Harass, which admittedly is a very big investment and commitment, but that can deal huge damage to a mineral line. It can be very tough to deal with, and due to that I just say that Protoss have a lot of early game options on top of all the things that are already viable as Protoss versus Terran. Meanwhile, Terran's one Rax command center is pretty standard. It is just the way they seem to be playing it. It works well. Admittedly, a gas coming down quite early though here from Neeb, so can't wait to see what he's planning with that. Obviously, with things like the siege tank not requiring an upgrade to enter siege mode, you can get some good stuff happening there, some nice little timing pushes, which are certainly hard to deal with. But also, you get things like Reapers not requiring a tech lab. And Reapers will just allow you to come in, harass quite a lot. Their damage output is nowhere near what it is in Wings of Liberty, but they're so much quicker. They can poke, they can prod, they can still cliff jump. And just due to all those things, you're actually able to get some really reliable scouting information with them, and potentially kill off a few workers as well, which is never gonna rain on your day. But Neeb, so far, one Rax CC. The only difference is the gas, which just delays this command center by about a minute or so. But to be honest, with what you gain from getting that Reaper out, I think it's very much worth it. The scout you can get off, just the information you acquire, absolutely huge. Now, bunker at the front is the standard follow-up to this. Then it's two barracks usually straight after. The tech lab coming down maybe for a quick stim, so we'll wait to see whether that is what Neeb is planning on doing, and indeed it is. Stim now getting started up, but the Reaper has managed to make it into the base. The Stalker is desperately trying to chase some of this down, but we can see probes are falling, only one for the time being, but this Reaper with one kill, taking no damage, is gonna be fine. It's also a complete scout off, sees two gas. Did it see the robotics facility? No, because that's hidden. And I realized that as I was already committing to my sentence, that did he see the robotics facility? And then I was like, no, of course not, because it's proxy. So a proxy robo, this is most likely gonna be bad times for Neeb if he doesn't scout it out, because he's only got this single bunker, and as such, he's not gonna be prepared. Even after the scout, he will not be prepared for that Immortal. We see that the single Reaper, oh my goodness, the Reaper, it's gonna spot it. The Reaper's gonna see it any second. Like, let's watch this from Neeb's vision. Oh, wait, I was not expecting to see a robotic facility there. Oh dear, that isn't so much fun for me. Suddenly, more bunkers coming down, and Neeb is now actually gonna be in an okay position because he's going to have a good number of bunkers. He's starting to ramp up his marine production as well. We see that the Stalker and Sentry haven't quite made their way across yet. We do have the additional gateways coming out, but by the time this push is really ready for Kitty to move into the natural, Neeb is going to have 3, if not 4, now 5 bunkers in position. And this is really smart by Neeb actually, because as long as you hold this as a Terran, you're going to be in a solid spot, especially when you can salvage the bunkers as well. I don't think you can be too cautious when you've already scouted out a proxy robotics facility, because ultimately once this push is ended, you can come and kill this and really hurt the tech availability of the Protoss opponent. But now we see Marines are starting to deal some damage. The bunker does need to go repaired though. It's not getting repaired at all yet. The Marine does get pulled out, switches into the other bunker, but with more bunkers there, I wouldn't be of a huge amount of concern. I've got still 2 bunkers, one on the high ground as well. My Marine count is ever increasing. There's not really much there in terms of just pure damage. There are the 2 Immortals, but that's my only real concern. Other than that, there's just a handful of sentries and a single zealot and a single stalker. I should be able to hold that off. SCV's just sitting there waiting to repair. Some force fields being used to prevent the repair on the bunker. But guess what? Another bunker is sitting there waiting. SCV's repairing themselves. One Immortal is down to half health already. Some good force fields did allow that one bunker to go down, but obviously we do see Neeb in a nice spot where actually I can still hold fairly comfortably, but Kitty not willing to stop this aggression quite yet. Still the production coming out though from Neeb, getting out a good number of Marines with only the 1 bunker left now. He could be in trouble. Here comes the push. Gonna move forward. Manages to snipe off that bunker before a cancel was able to be hit out of Neeb. So Kitty just being the aggressor. Behind this, of course, starting up that Nexus, getting the expansion down, chrono boosting the gateways is an important thing to note, just allowing for that quicker warp in time, that quicker reinforcing time. And the concern is just with this one bunker here, is the Kitty, as we saw there, might be able to sneak through. We do see the Marines do have stim now, so that is going to help them do some more damage. The Immortals are staying up though, the force fields preventing Marines getting forward at all, allowing Kitty to kill a good number of workers. Already 5 have been knocked out, so not a huge number, and as we see, Neeb is still significantly ahead in terms of that. But here comes a good stim, the Marines moving forward. There isn't enough energy for any more force fields. The Immortal will now fall. The sentries are going to get focused, and with the sentries going down, that could mean a big amount of problems for Kitty. But for the moment, Neeb does not have enough forces to deal with this. He's switching over the starport and factory in order to start that medevac production. And with this, Neeb is forced to just sacrifice his natural base, float that orbital command back up and in, trying to get it into the safety of his main. And now just chucking down some more bunkers. For Kitty, natural base secured, can now start that 2 pro production with chrono boosts as well. If they're spent on the Nexi, will be able to get out a good number of probes and potentially overtake his opponent as well there. But in comes the Observer, the factory now just landing and taking off again, because that's what it feels like doing. The Marine count looking a lot more sufficient, and with the medevacs now hitting, this is really where this pure gateway force is not able to deal with stim Marine and medevacs with combat shield. So as such, I'd say this is now happily defended. What Neeb really needs to do is realize that Kitty has pulled back, because the quicker he assesses that and can respond by floating down his natural, the more he'll stay in this game. Because as we can see, Kitty already starting to pull ahead in terms of the income just by having the natural secured now. But in terms of the game as a whole, that push did some nice damage. It delayed a bit of mining time of the natural, but Neeb had that natural down so much sooner that actually I think overall this game is still very level. The Dark Shrine coming down now for Kitty, so transitioning into DTs. Obviously Archons are also available from that, so we could be seeing Charge lot Archon. It depends really whether this Twilight Council research is charged, which will give us a lot of information and insight into what perhaps Kitty is planning on doing. Upgrade wise, +1 armor on its way, +1 weapon will come down shortly as well, no doubt, after that's done. But for the time being, the robotic facility will get taken out. That means no more observers, which in itself is quite frustrating. No more Immortals, but also without that, there's no way that Kitty's got to rebuild the robotics facility before he can start the robotics bay, and therefore before we're going to see any Colossus. Without Colossi on the field and only going with Archons, we know that it's not going to be High Templar because of the Dark Shrine. Actually, Neeb with Marine Marauder Medevac is going to have some very nice timing windows available to him, and as such, he's going to come in here with a medevac. There are some stalkers there which do see it. So with that, that medevac does need to leave. Medevac runaway, boost out of there. That is exactly what you want to be doing. Dropping a couple of Marines to their death, unfortunately. No such thing as leave no Marine behind, apparently, as far as Terran go. But as we see, that Twilight Council is going to get spotted. The Dark Shrine spotted. As such, missile turrets were already down preemptively. But Neeb should be absolutely fine. A Photon Overcharge going down on the Nexus. Medevac's picking up the Marines and pulling out. So, with this pullout, a little bit of damage done, nothing too major. We can see that the workers killed looking fairly equal. Lost tab looking slightly actually in Neeb's favour. And with the mules and the fact that the worker count is equal, then actually Neeb is ahead economically for the time being. He's also got a complete scout out on what his opponent has, knows that these DTs are coming, already has the missile turret down there, knows that Archons are viable as well, and with this can really prepare the sort of army that he needs to deal with it effectively, and specifically very cost effectively. Third base also getting started up. All the medevacs are getting loaded. Where are they going? They are just boosting all over the map. I love the boost ability. Is it just going to be a doom drop? Well, there is the observer there. Will it spot it? Are these medevacs just going to go straight into the main? They very well may. And in they come. Will the observer sees it now? But this is where you've got to pull back very quickly because these medevacs coming in. The entire army of Neeb now getting dropped down into the main base. The Archons are trying to get there with the medevac support with very little splash. This could be quite awkward. Are we going to see any time warps? No real need for them just due to not having anywhere to micro back. And that engagement, I'm going to say it, was actually appallingly bad for Neeb. That couldn't have gone much worse for him. He basically lost all of his army, killed one Archon and a handful of gateway units. Not really what you're looking for. He was being more cost effective than his opponent previous to that, but is now behind, getting out the Ghost Academy to deal with those Archons, just to make sure that actually I can EMP them to knock out their shields quickly, just trying to deal some nice damage ASAP. But the big problem for Kitty is while Archons are good in this mid-game position, needs to be thinking, what am I going to transition into? Am I going to get some Storms out? Am I going to get some Colossi out? Because if I don't, this Marine Marauder Ghost Medevac force, which Neeb is no doubt making behind this expansion, will just completely overpower anything Neeb could try and anything that Kitty could try and throw at him in terms of this Archon heavy field. So I'm loving the fact that we're seeing the Templar Archives coming down here. That just means Storm will be coming out in the near future, and as such, infantry no longer quite as potent. But it's still vulnerable to ghosts, and you're not really taxing your opponent in terms of getting out a good composition of Vikings and ghosts. So due to that, Colossi are always going to be something you want to happen at some point. Scan's going down, and I'm not quite sure where that scan actually hit. Nope, can't see it, but we do see just a small Marine force coming forward. This is not going to trade well. An awful lot of Zealots there, and a great time warp goes down from Kitty. That means that medevac has to pick up and pull back. Very little losses for Kitty in that situation, but Neeb losing quite a bit. A couple of SCVs are running across. No units to defend them, but there is the missile turret there, so detection available. Actually, anything to kill said DT is not. So the SCVs are taking it upon themselves, drilling that DT to death. Look at it die, but it got quite a few nice kills there. So DT definitely paying for itself, definitely being frustrating. And as such, with both players on 3 bases, with both players' work accounts, once you factor in mules being fairly similar, tech being fairly similar, and upgrades being slightly in favour of Neeb, I would just say that this game, all in all, is still very close and too hard to call. So where do you go from this as Neeb? I'd say Neeb is in a position where he's doing everything right. He knows that his opponent, or at least should know that it's unlikely his opponent has many Colossi, so as such just getting a good Ghost Force out, keeping upgrading, keeping building up the Marine Marauder Medevac with Death Ball is the right thing. Kitty needs to start really considering getting out that robotics facility again, because the macro one was taken out, so there's no robo. That's got to be rebuilt. Then you've got to get out the robotics bay before you can even start Colossus production. So that's what I'm really thinking that Kitty needs to be doing in the near future. Upgrades now coming out 2 at a time for both players, but still Neeb is slightly ahead. He's going to be at 2-2 before his opponent is at 2-2, or 3-2 rather. So due to that, I just think that Neeb should be okay. He's going to have a nice little timing window. Neither player pulling ahead in terms of the upgrades though overall. So scans coming down, seeing that there's a lot of gateways, does see the Templar Archives. That's really important for Neeb. He knows that High Templar are now a risk, Storm is a risk, and that will just influence how he chooses to engage into Kitty's army. Gonna go for better spread, try not to clump up his units too much, keep the medevacs back in case of feedbacks. A DT is on its way through, just gonna try and stealth its way down to the 3rd, but the bunker filled with Marines. We do see now Neeb trying to push forward. Needs to be very careful. They're forcing a stim. Kitty needs to be careful not to overcommit to this, because if Neeb were to turn tail, then he could have got a very good attack arc there, and that's something that Kitty wouldn't necessarily want to engage with. But these High Templar getting a huge amount of energy up already. So many Storms will be available, and that scan trying to get a good read on how much of an army is sitting up there. I'm not entirely sure how much it saw before Kitty moved the remaining army out of the way, but due to this 4th base, I'm thinking Kitty just playing more solid at the moment, and Neeb needs to step it up a gear to stay in this game, just due to how Kitty's going about it. But it's not all over yet. The ghost count up to 14, that's going to really help. But there are 11 High Templar out, but the trouble with getting so many High Templar without the Colossi is that damage is going to be bursty. Storms not stacking ever just means that if they're sniped off, or if a good EMP gets hit, where they will come together just like that, well, that could be the worst thing that Kitty could have had happen to him right now. So a couple of storms are still in the bank. A photon overcharge going down. We have got so many medevacs for Neeb, who is trying to start a step micro back. A lot of zealots are getting killed with no more storms. It's only the Archons providing any serious damage, and with those falling, this is such a solid spot for Neeb. Kitty down to just 106 supply. Neeb still up 150, still microing back. Feedback went down on one of the medevacs, but that isn't of much concern. The Marines, the Ghosts, the Marauders clean up everything, and I can't help but feel Kitty is going to be forced to GG here because there is just no units on the field. A couple of DTs warping in. They are chipping away, but a scan will put an end to that. The 4th base in the center just surviving. Needs to get sniped down. The photon overcharge is actually doing some nice damage as well, but that has now worn off, and with it falling, Neeb is now at over double the supply of Kitty, and as such the 3rd base is an inevitable target. The DTs are warping in quickly enough. Kitty is completely broke as well, and that just means that Neeb can steamroll his way forward, getting some snipes off on those High Templar. Needs one more though to kill it. Doesn't manage to do it quite yet. This 3rd base definitely dead. Kitty seriously on the ropes. What's back at the base? A couple of DTs, a couple of High Templar, and a couple of Zealots. Is it enough to deal with this force? If Kitty's lucky. Is it enough to deal with the resupply? Almost certainly not. A good storm dealing quite a bit of damage. The subsequent storms not quite as good, but some good storms hitting out there. And Kitty just able to deal with what was remaining relatively cost effectively, but having lost the 3rd, having lost the 4th, and being mined out at the main, it's one mining base for the Protoss compared to two mining bases for Neeb with mules as well. Just means the Neeb is going to be in such a solid position right now. Just needs to play it safe, needs to keep remaxing, but Kitty realizes, actually, I can't deal with this, I'm not going to win this game, and GG's out. So, those High Templar hits were great, but Neeb, just with a great EMP on so many of those High Templar in the big engagement in the center, just allowed him to win the game. So I hope you all enjoyed. Like the video, leave a cool comment, and of course subscribe, and I hope to catch each and every one of you tomorrow for yet another new cast. Thank you very much for watching, and bye.